Hello, Algebra 2. This is Lesson 91, Systems of Linear Inequalities. You're going to be graphing inequalities that overlap in some way, or sometimes they don't overlap. And so you will probably want to have some kind of colored pencil or different colored pens in order to indicate the two different graphs that will be overlapping. In the notes, you'll see how that looks on the right-hand side up here at the top. How you will have sometimes a dashed line, sometimes a solid line, and a rare occasion where they don't overlap at all. Okay, we're going to start with our practice questions from the textbook. So you'll want to have your textbook nearby. We are on page 381, question A, and I'm going to go ahead and write down the equations that are provided. We have y is greater than or equal to negative x minus 2. And then y is less than or equal to 1/3 x minus 2. Okay, we're going to approach each of these separately. So the first thing I'm going to do is the top equation. I'm going to make a little mark next to it that's the color I'm going to be using, so I can later on check myself on how I've done it. And how we graph is we look at our b value first. That tells us to start at the -2 on the y-axis. So I'm going to put a dot at -2. And then the next information I look for is the slope. If it has a negative out in front of the x, that's the same thing as -1x. So our slope is -1. Okay, that means that we're going to go down 1 and right 1. And I can repeat this a few times until I get an idea of how that line is going to look. Because it is a greater than or equal symbol, that means that it is a solid line. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get that line drawn. And then the fact that it is greater than, I want you to think about the y-axis whenever we're deciding less than or greater than. And the y-axis is going up from that place on there that we've marked. When it's greater, it's going up. Okay, so I'm going to find my highlighter tool here, and I'm going to shade everything that is up above. All right, so that's the first graph. Then I go to my second graph. I'm going to use pink for this one just so it stands out differently. And my second graph, I start out again at the -2, so my starting point is the same. My slope this time is 1/3. That's a positive slope, and I'm going to go up 1 and over 3. And I could also go down 1 and over 3 to get an idea of what my graph is going to look like. It's a less than or equal to. It is a solid line because it has that equal bar underneath. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get this one graphed as a solid line. And then because it is a less than equal to, I think about the y-axis, and the part under this graph is what's going to be shaded. Okay? And so essentially the part that is overlapped over here on the right-hand side, this is the part that overlaps. So I'm going to go back and shade that part just a little bit darker to make sure we emphasized it. All right, let's move over to question B. And again, page 381 in your book, I'm going to write down what the problem is. I have y is greater than x minus 3. Y is less than or equal to x plus 3. All right, they're already in standard form here, so I'm going to grab my tool to identify, okay, this top one I'm going to use some kind of a blue color. I start with the -3 telling me where I begin. So I go down 3 and put a dot. And then I don't see a slope, it's actually a 1. Okay, it's a silent 1 if you don't see one. That means I go up one and over one, up one, right one, up one, right one. And this one is actually not an equal bar included, which means it's going to end up being dashed. So I'm going to give myself some guidance before I dash this. Okay, so a dashed line, a positive slope, so it's going uphill to the right. All right, and then it is a greater than symbol, which means we're going to be above that graph. If we look at it from the y-axis perspective, we're going to graph above it. This is the part that gets shaded. All right, that's the first graph. Second graph, let me grab my pink tool. And we are starting on the +3 this time. So I'm going to go up here and put a dot at the +3 on the y-axis. And it looks like my slope is another silent 1, okay, which means that I'm actually on the same slope as the graph that we just drew. They look like parallel lines. Okay, now this one is going to be solid. It is not going to be dashed. All right, and the shading is less than or equal to, so that means it's going below the line that we're drawing, so it goes down that way. So I'm going to emphasize the middle part here where they overlap. Okay, this is the solution set, the part in the middle where they overlap. All right, and the homework on this lesson is going to be on Delta Math. You'll be getting some instructions on that here in the next couple days on how to log in and take care of that. But for now, you can go ahead and get the notes done and reach out if you have any questions. All right, take care.